It sounds far-fetched, an unrest spirit so desperate for revenge from beyond the grave that it terrorized the whole community. But according to the witnesses, the stories are all true. This is a story of Kentucky's killer ghost. Carl Pruitt, a man who lived in Pulaski County in the late 1930s, arrived home from work one day to find his wife cheating on him. The lover escaped, but the wife wasn't quite so lucky, and in a fit of rage, Carl took her life, using a chain as the murder weapon. Once he realized what he'd done, he then took his own life. At the request of Carl's family, he and his wife were buried in separate cemeteries, and almost immediately after his burial, strange things began to happen. Visitors to the cemetery claimed that the grass died around Carl's grave, then a pattern of discoloration emerged on his actual gravestone. Those who saw the strange exhibit were very frightened and insisted authorities remove Carl's gravestone altogether. Their request was, however, denied. Now, of course, the collective anger of the community over such a heinous crime could have just been manifesting in the form of pareidolia. But then things took an even stranger turn. One day, a group of boys rode their bicycles up to the graveyard, and all of them stood around and watched as one of the boys vandalized Carl Pruitt's grave. As they were leaving, the boy who had been responsible for the desecration of Pruitt's grave lost control of his bike and hit a tree. When the boy's body was recovered, claims were made that the chain from his bike was found around his neck. Things only got worse from here when a series of horrific themed events led more and more people to believe in the curse of Carl Pruitt. About a month after the boy's death, his mother took an axe and went into the graveyard and beat Carl Pruitt's grave to pieces. The very next day, while she was hanging up laundry, the clothesline somehow became tangled around her neck and strangled her. There was no trace of her vandalism in the graveyard, however, and the tombstone once again stood fully intact despite the damage she'd done to it. Sometime later, a farmer who had heard the wild legend but refused to believe it decided to test the theory for himself. As he was passing by on his horse-drawn wagon, he fired several shots into Pruitt's tombstone. The gunfire frightened the horses, and before the farmer was thrown out of the carriage, the reins wrapped around his neck. Over the years, several more deaths occurred as a result of the alleged Carl Pruitt curse. A police officer was chased out of the cemetery by phantom lights, which caused him to veer off the road and into a fence where a loose chain flew through the windshield and strangled him. And then another local man who had tried to chisel the tombstone into pieces was found hung up in the chain of the cemetery gates. Soon, people in the community were too afraid to visit the cemetery, so they started having the graves of their loved ones moved, leaving Carl Pruitt all alone until his grave was overtaken by the forest. It's said that in the 50s, a strip mining company came through and literally plowed over Pruitt's grave, effectively ending the reign of Kentucky's killer ghost. Follow for more spooky stuff.